Fight, fight, fight!
Fight, fight, fight!
Fight, fight, fight!
Fight, fight, a human right!
Fight, fight, fight!
Housing is a human right!
Fight, fight, fight!
Housing is a human right!
We have an amazing group of council members here today. My colleague Gio Say, Alexa Aviles, Mercedes Narcisse, Sandy Nurse, Julie Wan, Savina Brooks Powers, Linda Lee, and Sean Abreu. Let's give it up to a great showing of council members. And all of the amazing advocates. We appreciate your partnership in this fight. The charter gives the mayor the authority to issue a veto, but it also gives us the power to override it. And you can be damn sure that this city council is going to override Mayor Adams' veto, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. Am I right? This man appears more committed to distraction than action. He's more interested in the drama than results. He is more committed to his conservative ideology than getting anything done. This affordability crisis is Mayor Adams' affordability crisis. Eric Adams is making the housing crisis worse in New York City every damn day. 1 in 3 families in New York City pays a majority of their income in rent, and thanks to his rent guidelines board, it's getting worse. We have 6,500 vacant units of supportive housing and public housing in our city, and he is defunding the agencies that need to fix them. Evictions are through the roof. 25,000 evictions since the moratorium was lifted. 30% of tenants who were guaranteed the right to counsel are getting it. We are failing New Yorkers each and every day. There are twice as many homeless families as there were a year ago. And what does he do? Defund the Department of Homeless Services. What does he do to fund our housing agencies? It is wrong. This budget is an opportunity for housing justice. We must invest in this budget for the affordable housing that our communities demand, that our communities deserve. We cannot pass a budget without it. Am I right?
Yeah!
So that is why we are out here today. To tell Mayor Adams we are vetoing, we are vetoing, we are vetoing, and we are vetoing again, and we are fighting for a budget that New Yorkers deserve. My colleague Gio Say has been leading the fight to demand better outcomes from the Rent Guidelines Board. I want to thank him for his leadership and pass the mic.
Thank you. Fight, fight, fight! Housing is a human right! Fight, fight, fight! Housing is a human right!
Fight, fight.
Well, thank you for that opener, Councilmember Ressler. I don't know how you keep your voice every single time you come up to these rallies, but I appreciate the passion that you bring to this work, because passion is needed to fight for the New Yorkers that are being put out on the streets and being rent burdened every single day in this city. As much as I want to talk about our mayor, who is leading this city in a very odd way. New York City has a $106 billion budget. That's a bigger budget than 47 states in this country. And the fact that we are not doing right by the working class tenants, people that are looking for affordable housing in this city, to me, is an act of violence. But the city council, my colleagues who are standing right behind me and more who are across the street, are putting forward solutions every single day to fight for the people of New York. We're advocating to fully fund right to counsel. We're advocating to deeply invest in affordable housing in the city of New York. We're advocating and pushing back against the cruel mayoral appointed rent guidelines board who is increasing the rents of tenants across the city. And what is the mayor doing in response to that? He is pushing back and overriding the bills that we are putting forward to protect people who are looking for housing in this city. Now, again, as much as I want to talk about our landlord-in-chief, there is so much more that I want to uplift throughout this protest, this rally. We have a great lineup of speakers who have been staunch advocates for safe and secure housing in the city of New York. And I want to bring up a dear colleague and friend of mine, Councilmember Alexa Aviles, who's chair of the Public Housing Committee.
Thank you, everyone. I'm here to talk a little bit about public housing, and along the lines of all my colleagues here, big shout out to you all for holding the line on housing, on education, on transportation, on immigration, on everything that is important to our communities. I thank you and applaud you. But our public housing stock, we know, has been defunded year after year after year after year. And with the current crisis, the The number one issue for New Yorkers is housing. Yet, our biggest housing stock, social housing stock for low-income New Yorkers is NYCHA. What do? NYCHA has the biggest vacancy it has ever had, upwards of 6,000 units. And what do? The mayor cuts the vacant unit readiness program. Now, I implore New Yorkers to look at the rhetoric and look at the facts. Don't get gaslit by this nonsense. You cannot say that you are addressing affordable housing crisis in New York City and cut the very programs that we depend on, right? We're not even building. So we are calling for a full restoration of the vacant unit readiness program of $31 million in a $106 billion budget. We are calling for an investment of $2 billion in capital for NYCHA. The city's 10-year capital plan is $169 billion. And we commit $3.2 billion over 5 years. It shows that NYCHA is not a priority. And we say no to that. So we want the $2 billion capital commitment to support our neighbors, to give them dignified housing. And for the rental arrears, we have thousands of NYCHA families who were left out of the state program, who are in the hole, who experienced the pandemic like every other New Yorker. And yet there is no relief for them either. So we're here to stand firm and say we need this investment in our people, in New Yorkers, in black and brown, low-income New Yorkers, many who built this city and deserve the dignity, in our budget. And we want to see the money. We don't want no more rhetoric. It's nonsense, it's hollow. It does not match the facts on the ground. So thank you so much.
We're fortunate to have an amazing chair of our Public Housing Committee, just as we are a terrific majority whip and chair of our Transportation Infrastructure Committee, Sabina Brooks-Powell.
So it's unfortunate that on this Friday we have to come here to respond to the mayor doing the opposite of what he says he does, which is getting things done. The New York City Council has been working to get things done. The New York City Council has pushed legislation to help some of our housing insecure neighbors, to make sure that they can stay out of the shelter system, and so that we can move people who are in the shelter system into permanent housing. We will override these vetoes.
Yes, we will.
It's unfortunate that the mayor did not see from the overwhelming majority that passed those 4 bills how serious this council is about this housing crisis, how this council is committed to acting in this housing crisis. We are not here to talk about it. We are here to move this city forward. As we have record number of asylum seekers coming into the city every day, we still have New Yorkers who've been living in the shelter system for many years. We have 2 crises meeting head on right now, and we cannot fail to act. So, Mayor Adams, this message is for you. The New York City Council accepts your challenge, and we will override these 4 vetoes. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Whip Power. That came from the Majority Whip, y'all. So that means it's serious. It's serious. Up next, I want to bring up Councilmember Gail Brewer.
Thank you very much. I would say a couple of things. Yes, of course, we are going to override. We already had 41 people voting for those 4 bills. And I really don't understand. If you have an executive order that says 90 days should not exist for those who want to move out with a voucher, why do you veto a bill that says the same thing? I don't understand. And then the second thing is, the fact of the matter is, we all have to work together. We've got the NYCHA issues, we have the tenant interim lease issues, we have all of the, how do you have enough attorneys to keep people out of eviction so they don't end up in the shelters, and we have need for attorneys to deal with those who have immigration issues, and we have the issue of dealing with the Rent Guidelines Board and what's going to happen with those who have rent stabilization issues, and we have seniors who do not under the street because they only make 50,000 and we need 60,000 for the state to do. And we can go on and on with the housing issues. So the question we ask for you, Mr. Mayor, is when are you going to come to work not just with the city council, but with the whole of New York City? We also have to build housing. We're not building housing. We're not building affordable housing. So really the housing crisis is magnified and not being addressed. It is the #1 issue in the city of New York.
That's right.
You even have middle-class families who cannot afford to be in the city of New York. So we have got to work together on this issue. And to be honest with you, you're so upset you don't know how to work with us. We will work with you. So for goodness sakes, this has got to be a multi-pronged approach.
Right.
And I want to throw in Ward's Island. That needs housing too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gail. One of the fiercest organizers in the council, one of the leaders in the Progressive Caucus.
I'll keep it short. I think what you're seeing here today is a united council, a council that is united to override this veto. And I think it's really, really powerful that we have 34 people who signed on to these bills. We have 31 women in the council, and this man thinks he's going to push past us. He thinks he's going to bully us, and it's just not going to be the case. There are so many families right now who are in the eviction court process who do not have representation, who will probably be evicted. And the chances of them staying in New York City are slim. There are so many apartments that are ready to go, that need to have the final inspection so a family can move in. And it's so crazy that in this moment of crisis, this unprecedented crisis, the two different approaches. One, the mayor wants to defund programs, wants to defund services, and the council took this moment to make a structural adjustment to the way our shelter system works and put forth a long-lasting solution, and he wants to shut it down. It's not gonna happen. We will overwrite this veto. We are united, and we're gonna tell this mayor, you cannot move past us. You need to come to the table and collaborate and stop thinking you have all the answers when you don't. This council is willing to collaborate, is willing to think forward. They are strategic people here. These are women. We represent families. We represent the working class. We represent a diverse range of experiences, and we know what it's like to be tenants. We know what it's like to struggle. So please, stop acting like we cannot collaborate together, and we will override this veto. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Up next, I want to bring up someone who's no stranger to the issues that tenants face in our city, Councilmember Sean Abreu.
Fight, fight, fight!
Housing is a human right!
Fight, fight, fight!
Housing is a human right!
I am so grateful to be here in my capacity as the Vice Co-Chair of the Black Latino Asian Caucus, working hand in hand with our brothers and sisters in the Progressive Caucus. This day is very important. We are seeing what's happening on the other side of City Hall. We're seeing rents increases from the Rent Guidelines Board, which will result in displacement. And today, we're seeing a veto that will result in more displacement and keep people in shelters as opposed to keeping them in permanent housing. In this council, we are fighting for right to counsel, to make sure that families facing eviction have right to an attorney so that they can stay in their homes. There are over 25,000 cases right now in housing court that are going through the court system without a lawyer, and that's not right. We know that a lawyer can make the difference between staying in your home or being homeless. We know that having a lawyer representing you in housing court could mean that you not only get to stay in your own home, but your kid gets to stay in their own neighborhoods and have stable housing. But even better yet, when you support FHEPS, you keep people in their homes.
That's right.
And that's why supporting this FHEPS program is super important to this council, because you're investing people to stay in their homes before they get evicted in the first place.
That's right.
But we need to meet people and support people to prevent displacement, but also when they're on the verge of displacement by supporting right to counsel. And this council will hold the line. Thank you.
Sean Sean's been leading the fight on right to counsel, and it's been amazing. So thank you for your leadership, Sean. It's now my pleasure to introduce one of Brooklyn's best, Mercedes Narcisse. Woo!
Hello, y'all. Listen, I'm here not only as a council member, but a woman caucus that believe in the issues that we're facing in our city. When I'm in an office and having people coming, they can have a place for the children. They just came to look for the dream, the American dream. And we know, as a chair committee in hospitals, I want to tell you, if you don't have a place to lay at nighttime, your health is in question. Your children's health is in question. So the basic things that we want is a place to go to sleep. Yesterday I went to a rally and I'm looking at boxes. People said, do you want your child to be in a box? My question to all, when it's a pressing time, the question is, what are we doing for others? Do we want to be in the box or our children to live in the box? No. The city council, which is majority women, over 31 women, we feel the pain when a mother comes and they don't have a place. So we saying to the mayor, we have a plan. Do you have a plan? We have a plan as a city council. We brought the plan forward, but you rejected the plan. So now, how are we gonna move forward? Are we living the city? We're saying that we're addressing the inequity in housing. Who are we lying to? Are we lying? I guess right now we are lying because we're not doing everything. And the mayor, we have a plan. We are in a crisis. And the most important part of the crisis, we have to ask, are the housing or the apartment are affordable? They're not. That's our crisis. And we need to fix it. And we have a plan, Mayor. So if you don't do what you're supposed to do, like you already did, but guess what? We're gonna override it. Because we are working for the people in New York City.
That's right.
And remember who's paying us? The people of New York City. And we are responsible to make sure housing equity is being addressed. Like healthcare, like everything else, like education in our city. So the plan is we need to invest in natural houses. We need to make sure all the vacant apartments are being renovated and utilized for our city. And we need to make the investment now. So, Mayor, let's work together, making sure we address the housing inequity that we have in New York City. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Up next, back to Queens, Councilmember Julie Wan.
Fight, fight, fight!
Housing is a human right.
Fight, fight, fight!
Housing is a human right.
What you see before you today is a very, very quick response from the Progressive Caucus, the BLAC Caucus, the Women's Caucus, the Working Families Party, WIN, ANHD, CID. Right away, as soon as we got the news of the veto, we got together. Thank you so much for all of your leadership, Lincoln and Emily and everybody else. But you heard it very clearly. We will not allow you to overrule our legislation for making sure that people have path to permanent housing. I want to give a special shout out to Councilmember Perina Sanchez, who just got here, and both Councilmember Diana Ayala and Councilmember Tiffany Caban, who have introduced these pieces of legislation to not only make sure that there's a long-term plan to make sure that New Yorkers have a roof over their head, but to prevent them from going homeless in the first place. And this is a council that is fighting to make sure that you don't get evicted, to make sure that you have a pathway to pay for your rent. But if that is not enough for you, then listen to the voices that you have seen it for yourself face to face, where they have said in my shelters when you came to visit and said, Mr. Mayor, I need someone to take my CityFHEPS vouchers. You have said that when you opened up the last male shelter in my district, that it'll be for 90 days only, that the respite centers are temporary. When you walk into the respite centers for the migrants that are being sheltered right now, they sleep in rows like sardines, foot to head, so that you're going to sleep with someone else's feet right above your head, and shoulder to shoulder to other men who are sleeping there. That is not humane living. And you cannot continue to warehouse people who have come here looking for sanctuary and dignified housing. And that is what this package does. And we will continue to stand and hold the line and say no to his veto, and we will override it. And we will fight to make sure that every single person that comes to New York, we will call them New Yorkers, and we will make sure that they have permanent housing long term. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Julie. Sticking in Queens, all the way to Eastern Queens, the great Linda Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Housing is a human right, and not only is it a human right, as someone who comes from the social service sector, it is the social determinant of health. At my former nonprofit, when I was working in the community, people were struggling, but before jobs and before anything else, what they needed was housing. If you don't have housing first, that determines everything else that comes after that. So it is a basic human right, and it is also part of our mental health roadmap, because housing is super important when it comes to mental health and all the services that we're trying to provide.
That's right.
So not only do we need to provide the housing and make sure we veto, put back the bills that the mayor's trying to veto, but we also need to fund the groups, the nonprofits, the city agencies that are doing all the work and all the things. And on this council, not only are we women-led, and not only are we the most diverse, but you got social workers, nurses, housing rent attorneys, activists, teachers, folks that have been in government, and we are all coming together to say we will not stand for the mayor's veto, and we will collectively work together to fight against this, to make sure that our communities are not hurt. Who loses out the most in our community? The people who need the services, who need the housing. They lose out the most. And with the 3% rent increases, guess what? Our salaries are not increasing by 3%, and it's going to further have a negative impact on people who live and work in this city, and we need to make sure to protect them. So we got to fight.
Housing is a human
Okay,
right.
sorry. Fight!
Housing is a human right.
Fight!
Housing is a human right.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was awesome. We are stupidly lucky in this city council to have an extraordinary chair of our Housing and Buildings Committee. This FHEPS package would not have gotten done without her. She is the one and only Pirina Sanchez.
Housing is a human right.
Fight!
Housing is a human right.
Y'all, the mayor's rent guidelines board just raised our rents. The mayor made a campaign promise of $4 billion dedicated to housing in his campaign for mayor. That has not been fulfilled. And now the mayor is choosing to veto legislation that would stabilize our communities and keep our people in their homes. Which one is it? You cannot say that there is a housing crisis, that it is the #1 issue of importance to New Yorkers, and then turn around and do nothing for New Yorkers. This budget is a moral document. This legislation that we are trying to pass is for our people, and we will not relent. We will stand for our constituents who are struggling. That's right. This legislation that we passed in the New York City Council is money saving. This legislation and the approach that our New York City Council has on this budget is fiscally responsible, because stabilizing our communities, preventing evictions with the right to counsel, preventing evictions with vouchers, saves the city of New York on mental health, on school displacement, which leads to behavior issues in our schools. That's what we do as a government when we do not invest in our people. We save by having safer communities that are more stable, because violence comes from instability. Violence comes from pain. It is painful to be evicted. It is painful to go to a shelter in Queens
This is my students at IS 206. They are living in shelters in Queens and in Brooklyn, and they're traveling an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to IS 206. That is injustice. That is unacceptable. We are going to stand. Mr. Mayor, we stand ready to work with you. We know that you know the pain. Now we need you to put your actions behind that pain, because that's what we're doing as a New York City Council. Thank you to the Speaker of the New York City Council. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you to the advocates who don't relent. We will not relent.
Housing is a human right. Housing is a human right.
You can see I didn't overstate it one little bit. Irina is the best. It's now my pleasure to introduce another champion for housing justice, a longtime tenants attorney from Queens with a little bit of Brooklyn cred, the one and only Shaker Krishna.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councilmember Shaker Krishna from Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, Queens. We have to be very, very clear about this. Housing is the most urgent crisis in our city because it connects to every other crisis around us. And the mayor's veto today only makes that crisis even more urgent. The spiral that happens because of evictions, the spiral that happens when tenants can't get access to CityFHEPS or other vouchers is endless, and it continues in a dire and dire way. I have seen it firsthand as a tenant lawyer for 13 years, what it means when we don't support, as a city government, our tenants to stay in their homes. As our housing chair, Councilmember Sanchez, had said, the most effective way to stop homelessness, to stop evictions, is to keep people in their homes before the crisis even starts. And that is why it is unconscionable that the mayor has vetoed these bills, passed overwhelmingly by our city council. And so we are doubling down in our efforts, standing firm to override the mayor's veto, to send a message loud and clear that at least us in the city council, we know that housing justice is the most urgent fight that we face. We are standing firm and fighting together to make sure that right to counsel is funded so that our tenants have access to legal representation, because having a lawyer and not having a lawyer, and I know this because I did this work far before Right to Counsel and fought to create this program. Not having a lawyer is the difference between staying in your home and being evicted, even if you have all the rights in the world on paper to stay in your home. We know this as a city council, and so we will fight to make sure that Right to Counsel is funded and our tenants have access to lawyers, and that the CityFHEPS programs and increases that we fought so hard for as a city council, we stand firm and send the message loud and clear that a veto will not stand in our way, and we will override it. This is the most urgent crisis we face. Thank you to all the organizations that are here. We proudly fight by your side to protect and champion tenants' rights in the city. Thank you all so much.
I want to shout out some of the great groups that are here. I see HSU, I see Housing Justice for All, the WFP, ANHD, CSS, many others. I want you to hear from a few of the great advocates who are here. Why don't we start with Wynn, who's played such an important role in getting this PHEPS package done. Let me introduce Dr. Henry Love.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Henry Love. I am the Vice President of Policy and Planning at WIN. WIN is the largest provider of family and services to those experiencing homelessness. We serve over 6,000 people per night, including 3,500 children. What we are faced in right now is an urgent crisis, and what the City Council has done is show leadership. And this is what happens when women are in charge, quite frankly. And when these bills are overturned and the mayor's actions are overturned, millions of families, millions of children for generations will be impacted. That's how serious this is. In the same moment, the mayor is proposing budget cuts to homeless service providers like WIN and so many of our other sister organizations. What this means is services for those who are most in need or in crisis mode right now, fleeing the violence from respective places all over the world, fleeing extreme issues of poverty in their communities, they are going to have services cut. They are not going to be able to have the same level of mental health supports, of services that we are able to provide. And what this ultimately means is that families will be in shelter longer. So WIN vehemently opposes the mayor's 2.5% cuts to budgets for homeless service providers. It is imperative that we have those, we at least have those monies in our accounts, but also that we have a COLA of 6.5% for those who need it. And those are city workers who are working in our shelters, who are working hard every day. It's not right that they are at risk for eviction themselves. It's not right that they are making often minimum wage. It's not right that they are relying on public assistance. They are helping people in need. It's imperative that we go against those 2.5% cuts and we demand a COLA for our human service workers.
Thank you so much, Henry. Another organization that's instrumental in this FHEPS package is Homeless Services United. They are the group that advocates for the best shelter operators and providers in New York City. Let me introduce Policy Director Eric Lee. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Wrestler. Thank you to the Progressive Caucus for showing up today. Thank you to the Speaker's Office, Deputy Speaker Ayala, and everyone that supported the CityFHEPS bill package. We stand with you as you override the mayor's veto. Thank you. Homeless Services United is a coalition of the nonprofit homeless service shelter providers, outreach providers, and eviction prevention home-based providers in New York City. We operate the majority of shelters and programs that help New Yorkers stay housed and move from shelter into permanent housing. At this moment, we need to shore up the safety net in New York City. We need it as robust and strong as possible. We urge the mayor to work with the council to pass the city budget supporting the needs of nonprofits, helping shelter and prevention programs, including rescinding the 2.5% cut to DHS and HRA programs, including a 6.5% COLA for our human services and homeless services staff, working to keep people safe and housed within shelter and permanent housing. And we again stand with the council as they prepare to override the mayor's veto. Our nonprofit providers are stretched to a breaking point right now. Our home-based staff, working to prevent evictions, have flexed their capacity to try to meet the current need. While they only have budgets to staff at ratios of 34-to-1, cases to case managers, they're actually serving upwards of 94 to even 120 cases per person in their programs. Most programs do not have available appointments for intake for at least 2 to 3 months right now across the city. We can't help if we don't have the staff to help New Yorkers in need. Likewise, our shelter providers are already being told to eliminate staff and condense multiple roles into single positions. This will negatively hurt services for people in shelter, people at risk of eviction, and more people will be in shelter longer and lose their homes. Many of our staff are literally one paycheck away from becoming homeless themselves. We need a 6.5% COLA to be able to close vacancies, to be able to fully staff our programs. And we need a 2.5% budget cut to be taken off the table so that services aren't further diminished. Thank you again to the council for such a strong response to the mayor's veto today, and we stand ready to work with you to make these bills a reality. Thank you.
And our final speaker today comes from one of the only organizations in New York City that is actively organizing homeless New Yorkers and ensuring that their lived experience is at the forefront of our policymaking. The lead organizer from local New York, Adolfo Obrero.
Thank you for the beautiful presentation. And I do commute every day to Brooklyn. But my name is Adolfo Obrero, and I'm the Housing Campaigns Director at Vocal New York. And before I let my anger overtake me, I just want to thank the council here because they actually did what was necessary in this year, right? We had executives, we had a governor, we had a mayor who started this year by pandering, by saying that housing is a human right, that we are facing a housing and homelessness crisis. But when presented with solutions that can actually address and save lives, instead of leaning in and working with leadership, like elected officials, like the council, and organizations like ours, they ran away. and they continue to gaslight and lie about what is needed in this moment. So I want to uplift the council for being one of the bold legislative actions that they took by passing the 4 bills in terms of the CityFHEPS package on May 25th. It is now June 23rd, and this man, instead of actually saying, you know what, you're right, and I'm wrong, I can admit that I don't know, and I don't understand the perplexities of this housing homelessness crisis. In a time when my chief housing officer resigned, and one of the reasons that they resigned was because of this opposition to this piece of legislation. If you really are intent on solving this crisis, you would have signed it day one. You would have signed it as soon as the council passed it. Instead of playing games these last couple of weeks. Instead of making us kind of be like, well, are you gonna do it or are you not gonna do it? What message are we sending to homeless New Yorkers? What message are we sending to everyday people when we're consistently pitting homeless New Yorkers, asylum seekers, and folks in community who are at risk of eviction? We're telling them that, you know what, this government does not give a damn about you. Right? And then we have the nerve to ask you to vote for our leadership. But we need to support the council in this. And I'm thankful for everyone who's here today, and particularly every single one of those members who voted for the bill, and calling on them to, when it's time to do the veto override, to vote in support of this veto override, because we have a gargantuan task in front of us. We have to ensure just and fair implementation, especially in the face of an administration that clearly does not know what it's doing. But we do, right? We do, right? Yeah. So saying that, thank you for having me.
Adolfo brings the heat. Now, I lied. We got 2 more very brief speakers, but they're worth it. Let me start with Brian from the Right to Council Coalition, and then we'll go to Baque from Center for Independent Disabled.
Hi everyone, my name is Brian Fotino. I am a tenant organizer with the Right to Council Coalition. Sorry to get a caught. And Catholic Migration Services. I am here today because I am in court month after month, and I am seeing tenants being denied their right to counsel. In 2017, we came together to pass a law that guaranteed all tenants in eviction proceedings legal representation, but the reality is that legal service providers are so stretched that they cannot provide every tenant with representation. I am in the court and I'm seeing legal service providers tell tenants, I'm sorry, we're too busy, we've taken too many cases, we can give you a brief consultation for 30 minutes or refer you to another organization who will refer you to another organization, but at the end of the day, tenants are being evicted without ever having a lawyer. And we know that's not right because 84% of tenants who have their right to counsel stay in their homes. Right now, the court is an eviction machine. There are 25,000 tenants without representation, and if we don't do something, that will be 25,000 more people on the streets or in the shelter system, because at the end of the day, living on the streets, that's not housing. Living in the shelter system, that's not housing. And we're here today to say that housing is a human right, that no tenant should have to be evicted, and that all tenants have the right to legal representation. For landlords, this is a job. This is about making money. But for us, for tenants, this is about the roof over our heads. This is about having somewhere safe to sleep at night, so we don't end up on the streets, so we don't end up in the shelter system. So I am here today to call on HRA to fully release their RFP in accordance with Local Law 53 that was passed by the City Council, guaranteeing funding for tenant organizing, groups like the group I work for. That law was passed, that money was allocated in a draft RFP in late 2021. Where is the money? We need the money. We are also calling on the budget to fully include funding for the full implementation of Right to Counsel, Local Law 136, which is vastly underfunded. We need more funding so legal service providers have the salaries that they need to retain staff, to provide proper representation to tenants so people aren't being turned away. Please give us the money for Local Law 136. Fight, fight, fight.
Housing is a human right.
Fight, fight, fight.
Housing is a human right.
Hello everyone, my name is Baque Chow. I'm the committee organizer in housing and healthcare at Center for the Independence of the Disabled, New York. We all know and agree that living in New York City is very difficult. I would just say that it is like being a frog and living in a void water. By the time you realize that you have to jump, it's going to be too late. And we're not going to jump out of our house. We live here. This is our city. We will freeze the rent. We're also going to advocate to fight the right to have a lawyer who will defend you in court. That's why we need to pass this right to counsel. It needs to be passed. And we have to talk to the mayor that this is our right and this is our city, and we are going to pass this bill. And we need to do it now. We need to advocate for ourselves right now in order to pass this bill. I will be very short, and I know that the mayor is going to hear us. Let's fight. Let's keep fighting. Fight, fight, fight. Housing is a human right. Fight, fight, fight. Housing is a human right.
Okay, great. I think we're set for today. Just want to close by thanking each and every person who came out to express our strong support. I think you almost heard from a veto-proof majority of the City Council at this press conference. We are overriding this veto as soon as we possibly can, and we are fighting for housing justice in this budget. Thank you all. Let's make it happen.